Welcome aboard for an illuminating conversation with cruise industry trailblazer Christine Duffy, president of Carnival Cruise Line. Learn how she charted a course to transform Carnival into a certified great place to work through an inclusive, engaging culture. This influential executive gives insights into leadership, sustainability, growth, and more. Christine Duffy, president of Carnival Cruise Line, next on the MDC-TV podcast.
Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our college president, Madeline Pumariega, and to the president of Carnival Cruise Line, Christine Duffy.
Because we have these fireside chats, really, I won't ask you the corporate questions, right? We could probably Google or Chat GPT, anything we want to know about Carnival, right? But what we want to know is about you, Christine, about your journey. And so, a little while ago we met with a few students that are working in our offices. You said how you started from the very bottom at Carnival. I did at the college. We talked about my first job was McDonald's, but I started at the college as a part-time advisor. And then went up, and so many of you at the college work part-time and are looking for that full-time job. And so talk about your pathway to really the flagship Carnival Cruise Lines. How do you become president and CEO now for 8 years? Today's your anniversary on Groundhog Day. So we want you to triple those numbers, but just about your journey to arriving to this position.
Well, as you said, today is 8 years, and it literally felt like Groundhog Day when I found out that I got the job, because I didn't grow up at Carnival. I did start at the bottom, working at a travel agency as a receptionist when I was turned down for a job as a Pan American flight attendant because I was too short. And so I didn't go to college.
Flight attendants then. How many of you know Pan American? None of our students do.
Pan Am, there was
Pan
that TV show, TWA.
We're tall, right?
It was really, that was my dream, to be a flight attendant, to travel the world. My mother and family are from France, so I did have the opportunity as a young girl to be able to travel, and that was my dream. And then my dream was completely shot because I wasn't tall enough. But I did make it to the final interviews.
I could have given you a little bit of my height,
Right, we could trade. Well, somebody else told me they didn't make it because they were too tall. So I guess it works both ways. So that's why I started as a receptionist. I thought, well, if I can't be a flight attendant, I'm going to be in the travel industry. I got a job at Rosenbluth Travel in Philadelphia, which is where I grew up, and literally worked there, and then worked at another agency where I ultimately became president over 20 years. So it took a long time. And then, we were acquired by another company in St. Louis, and shortly after that, I was appointed as the first female president at Marriott's Travel Company. And Marriott's runs the largest corporate meetings, events, and incentive programs, and they had been in business for 110 years. And when I showed up in St. Louis, it was really like Dorothy, just coming into Fenton, Missouri, and someone actually said, we bought your company. We don't know what you're doing here. So that was my introduction.
Well, welcome.
But welcome. But I stayed there for a good 8 years, and then had the opportunity to be very involved, get involved in politics in Washington, because in 2008, when the financial meltdown happened and President Obama said people shouldn't be taking trips to Las Vegas, that really shut down our business, and many, many jobs were lost. And we went on a campaign to explain that the travel and tourism industry is a direct generator of jobs, both indirect and direct economic impact across every congressional district in the country. And I showed up in Washington, D.C., and I was going on the Hill to meet and make sure they understood. And someone said, you know, you just can't show up here when you've got a problem. Like, where have you and your industry been all this time? And they were right. So I became very involved in the U.S. Travel Association, and I'm very pleased. This year I finished my term as chair. I serve on the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, on her Travel and Tourism Advisory Board, and in the recent omnibus bill, we will have the first ever Undersecretary of Travel and Tourism in this country. Can you believe we have never had that position? Every other country has someone that is focused on travel and tourism as part of the administration. So that's a long way of saying I went from Maritz to run the trade association for the global cruise industry. When they saw what a great job I did in Washington, we ultimately met with President Obama. And President Obama listened, understood, and then we created Brand USA, which was the first public-private corporation to promote travel to the U.S., international inbound, which is a huge, huge part of the travel business here in the U.S. And so I was recruited to run the Cruise Industry Association globally. And the industry at that time, unfortunately, had some very public incidents, crises. And as a result of my work there, Mickey Arison, who is our chairman, and the vice chairman, Howard Frank, suggested that I would be great to be president of Carnival Cruise Line. And when they said that to me, I thought they were talking to someone else, because surely I'm not tall enough. But
travel the world, right?
I am the first woman president of Carnival Cruise Line, which is our flagship brand. And I am very, very proud to represent 40,000 Carnival Cruise Line employees. Carnival Cruise Line is the most popular cruise line in the world. So,
wow. So I have a lot of places I want to jump from there, right? And especially for context around our students about when you have a dream and a passion, it may not look as linear as you have in mind. But how then do you follow the wandering road without getting discouraged, right? So you went down this other path, and when you were sitting, and you were leading the industry, and you said you were quite surprised with Mickey Arison. What did you think would be that next move? Did you ever see yourself as president at Carnival? And how do you think your leadership, I get this question all the time. And I try never to ask women the question because I just wonder, why do they ask? But then I know kind of why they ask. I was the first chancellor of our system, very much similar to being an advocate in Tallahassee for the 28 state colleges. I don't necessarily think I was thinking I was going to be president of Miami-Dade College, nor did I do it because I thought I would be president of Miami-Dade College. Then asked by a few to come back home and lead the college, who had gone through some very public issues on a presidential search. You kind of say, are you sure it's me? I was a student there. I played basketball there. I started as an advisor, But how does your leadership style, how much is being the first woman influence your vision for Carnival and the way that you lead, and what makes it different when we're the first to be that? And I always say I'm the first, but to the ladies out there, I want to make sure I'm not the last, that there's far more capable women that follow as president of Miami-Dade College one day.
Well, it's certainly, you take it to heart that you are the first woman and that you're representing women. At the same time, earlier in my career, I was very active outside of the company in other associations and that supported the industry. And it was always fascinating to me because the majority of people that work in travel and hospitality are women. And yet, very few women hold the top jobs. And I remember going to one of our board meetings, and I was pitching this idea of creating a women's leadership initiative where we would provide research and scholarships and networking opportunities so that we could see more women that would reflect actually the workforce. And I remember one of the gentlemen in the room saying to me, why would we need more women? There are already so many women working. And it was just struck me like he actually did not internalize the fact that there were very few women at leadership. And it was another gentleman who became a lifelong friend who had 4 daughters. And he at the time was president of Wyndham Hotels. And they wrote me a check for $300,000 because he said, I want my daughters to know that they can have a seat at this table. Now, of course, in that meeting, I was the only woman. But we did get our initiative going. And so I've always felt a responsibility, like I'm sure you do, when you're the only woman in the room or the first woman, we do have a responsibility to make sure that we're bringing others along. But I think today, it's not only women, it's not just gender. It's this idea that diversity, inclusion, bringing everyone along actually makes us better. It makes our business better, it makes society better, it makes our communities better. And so for me, having 32,000 crew members from all over the world, over 110 countries, spending time with them, listening to them, and we very much focus now on how do we create a career path for people who join Carnival on the ships that actually now are coming and working shoreside. Because again, it's this diversity of thinking. We also still hire a lot of people, as I was saying to the students earlier, former McKinsey consultants and Boston Consulting Group consultants, people that have been at Carnival for 30 years. I think it's the mix of all of us that have enabled us to be so successful and to create a great culture.
That's awesome. We at Miami-Dade College think talent is universal, opportunity is not. And as Democracy's College, what we build is opportunity for our students. And we understand that through the power of education, you get on that path. I wanted to ask you, how much were you able to influence? We know what happened during COVID. We know really the cruise lines were, of all of the industries, I can't think ever that, or could you have ever imagined that your industry would be just shut down to zero? How much did you use that experience as being an advocate in DC for the industry, right? For the association, the relationships that you built, the importance of who you could call right away to understand and make the case. And I say this all the time, how important it is for leaders to focus on relationships and that connection, never to be in such a hurry that you forget to build the relationships. How much did you rely on those relationships you established to help navigate not just Carnival Cruise Lines, but really the whole industry, and how influential was that for you and impactful?
Well, as you said, it's incredibly important, and it's one of the things I do talk a lot about for our own employees and for an audience like this. You know, people tend to, you have your job, you keep your head down, you do your work, and you assume that people actually understand what you do. Now, whether that's, your boss's boss, or whether that's a regulator sitting in Washington or somebody sitting at the International Maritime Organization in London. So it's part of our job to ensure that we communicate clearly with data why what we do matters. And I believe that those relationships and networks, both inside of your company and your business, but also outside, you have to really think about who are all the stakeholders. And for me in this role, I've got a lot of stakeholders that, every state that we operate in, every country. We have ships in Australia. You have to visit. You can't just show up when you have a problem, like I did back in 2008, and think that people are going to put you at the top of the list. We obviously were very, very challenged by CDC and the way that the cruise industry was singled out from every other industry, particularly as we saw things starting to open up, and with the protocols and all of the things that we do on a ship that protect public health and medical. It was tough, but the relationship that I had with Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, the relationships with U.S. Travel Association, with members of Congress. We just recently visited earlier this week with a member of Congress, the mayor here, Daniela Cava, that we work closely with as part of Restart. And the great thing about travel and tourism, and I think, is that it really is a bipartisan issue. They're really, people across both sides of the aisle understand, appreciate, and recognize the benefit and value of travel, tourism, and the jobs that it creates for all levels of the community. So,
I mean, it's economic development, right? And Florida, without a doubt, our sunshine and our weather today, if you saw the news today, you don't want to be in Texas, and this weekend you don't want to be in the Northeast, you want to be right here in Florida, and so we rely so much on it. So it's not only the impact that it had as you were working with the mayor on just the direct cruise line and Carnival, it was the entire community, because this community's economic development and prosperity relies so much on travel and tourism, and particularly not just Miami, but really all of Florida. You touched a little bit about culture, and I wanted to ask you, there's, in any leadership book, you'll read that culture will always trump strategy. You can have the best strategy, you can have the best vision, but if you don't create the right culture in anything that you're leading, whether it's a student organization, a department, a college, a cruise line, or the President of the United States, the key of culture, how do you focus on culture, and what would you say if we asked your colleagues at Carnival and we said, what's Christy's main thing around culture, what would they say?
Well, I think they would say that I've changed the culture. I believe you need different leaders for different times. My predecessor had been the CFO of Carnival Corporation for 13 years before he stepped into this job. And at that time, he had to do a lot of things that were difficult and drive a lot of change. And so I was able to step in at a time where the company recognized it needed a different face. It needed someone that could communicate and take the company to the next place. And for me, based on my background, that was really leaning into our people and culture. And I tell this story of when I first started on February 2nd, 2015. My original office at Doral was, it was bigger than the condo that I was living in. And I had this gigantic desk, and my feet didn't even touch the ground. And there were glass doors with two assistants sitting outside, and they would bring me breakfast on a tray in the morning. And I felt like I was trapped. And people would come in with PowerPoint presentations all day, meeting after meeting. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I actually going to understand this business? I had the benefit of 4 years running the trade association, so I really understood the regulatory issues, the environmental, security, all of that. So I decided that I was going to visit every one of our ships. At the time, we had 26 ships. And people thought I was crazy, but I said, no, I'm going to go visit every ship. And I did in that first year. I visited every ship, and I met with crew members at all levels, and I asked them 3 questions. What was working well? What was not working? And if they were me, what would they be doing? And I'll tell you what, I learned more in that year than I could have learned in 5 years if I had sat in the office. So my big focus for all of us is to get out there and touch the people that touch the customer, spend time with the customer, because you do have to, yes, look at the data. We do need to lean into people that are developing, future innovation and technology, but we have to understand and connect. What does all of that strategy actually mean? What does it look like? How do you execute effectively? Because if you don't execute and have the people that you're communicating with, for them to understand why we're making the decisions we're making, because sometimes we do have to make unpopular decisions. How we keep people engaged, how they are part of and feel that they are included. to me makes all the difference. And Carnival Cruise Line, over the past 8 years, with the exception of COVID, we have had the best years in the history, 50-year history of our company.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
So true to building the culture alongside the strategy, and then if you build the right culture alongside the strategy, then you can execute on it, because as leaders we know there's no way we're the single point of execution. The reality is that the vision gets executed out by everyone. For here at the college, our focus has been the culture of care, is making sure that it starts with our team feeling that they are nurtured and cared for here at the institution. If they feel that, then we know our students are going to feel that wherever they are, whether it's a classroom or an office, and just focusing on that. And to the students, I'll say, how do you build culture? Culture is built by what you reward, what you recognize, what you celebrate, but it's also behavior that you accept as the norm when it doesn't align to values. And so a lot of times people ask, what is culture? And culture is really sat in the fabric of behaviors of an institution, of an organization, and what's celebrated, and quite frankly, what's also allowed.
And it's interesting, because I do think, and it warms my heart even to listen, Beverly, as you were talking earlier, and to hear more and more leaders and that expression of, culture eats strategy for breakfast has been around a long time. I don't actually believe that corporations were operating with that way. I think we have seen a real shift where walking the talk and leaning into culture and creating trust is actually mandatory, because I don't believe this next generation, and that's this group of students, will tolerate anything less than that. And so I think we're just hearing every industry talking about experience. I get phone calls all the time because, as you were saying, we are in the guest experience business. We don't have a business if our guests aren't happy. And my view is, if my crew isn't happy, my guests aren't going to be happy. But healthcare, colleges, everybody is trying to figure out, how do we improve experience for our employees? And I think that's so great right now. Some of the harder part is what you said, making decisions when leaders don't walk the talk. How do we respond? And, just this year we've had several cases, people that were long-term tenured employees, leaders, that were separated from the company because one of our culture values is speaking up without fear, and that we as leaders listen and learn. And I think those tough decisions, right? It's easy to talk the talk, but when you have a great performer, and we talk about people's technical capabilities today, but what is their integrity? What is their, how do they do their work? At Carnival, what we've now implemented is your performance performance at the end of the year. 50% is evaluated on what you get done, the business objectives. The other 50% is, how do you get your work done? How do you engage with colleagues? How do you operate as part of a team? And that's really a pretty big shift from what I would say the norm was when I started in my career a very long time ago, where it was only about business results, and whatever means to the end, that was okay. And so I think for all of you that are going to be entering the workforce, this is a great new time where you should expect that culture and how leaders treat their employees and walk the talk against the values is a paramount decision to where you ultimately spend your time and your work.
Without a doubt, I think, first of all, you see there's probably 4 generations in this room. And for any leader right now, you're leading 4, if not 5 generations. And so, if I said, NASA, everyone would have a different thought here, right? If you're in our generation, we probably think of the Challenger, the anniversary that just happened. For some, it's like, what is the Challenger? For us, we can probably tell you exactly where we were standing when that happened, right? And if we were thinking about another generation, they're thinking about the day man walked on the moon, right? And so that's the part, the aspect that as leaders, being students of our trade, is that we now lead multi-generations in our organization, and the importance of being able to give them that sense of belonging, that they too can impart their values and their kind of fingerprints, if you will, on our organizations. I'm going to ask you one question. We're going to turn to other questions, because I read this and I kind of didn't believe you, because I was like, are you sure, Alejandro, Amanda, everybody? Because when I was chancellor and you work in the Department of Education, there's like not a lot of happiness inside government, I promise you. And I hired someone and I said, look, you know, her title was this real technical title, but I really said she was the Chief Happiness Officer. And I said, if I could really name you something, is you're like the Chief Happiness Officer. And she's still a great friend. And you have a Chief Fun Officer.
Yes.
Tell us about the Chief Fun Officer.
Well, you know, Carnival is all about fun. And Ted Arrison's vision when he started Carnival was, back then, cruising was for the elite. You know, it was for the privileged. It was very expensive, and there was first class and second class. And he believed that every American should be able to afford a fun vacation. And so Carnival was always about fun and being a great value, affordable, creating memorable vacations for everyone. And so when I came, you know, I wanted to lean into who we were, but put, of course, our own mark. So that was where we came up with choose fun as sort of this verb, like action. We're going to choose fun with Carnival. And then we said, okay, who can we get that embodies fun, that everyone knows, and who happened to play for the Miami Heat, and is larger than life. He couldn't have been a flight attendant either.
No.
Our Chief Fun Officer, Shaq O'Neal. And
I had to read and call and be like, for real, where did I miss that? Shaq is the Chief Fun Officer for Carnival. So I love that. I love that. Alejandro, I think some questions I want to make sure that we don't monopolize. Anybody coming up for questions?
Don't forget to subscribe to the MDC-TV podcast for fascinating talks with leading business talents. Get exclusive insights to chart your path to success.
Hi, my name is Manny Sarmiento, President and CEO of Doral Chamber of Commerce, and we like fun. We create that culture, too. We take care of our employees. So when we bring someone in, interns, Maryland, I need interns for the summer. When we bring interns in, we teach them the culture, and we make sure that we educate them in the real practice of real life, because being here is different than when you get out there. A couple things. I want to thank you. We wore the St. Jude's pin today.
Thank you. I forgot mine today.
You can have mine. It's okay. We do the event thanks to you on Carnival, which we're hoping to get back to in the spring here, where we go and we take our business leaders on the ship, and we have a great speaker like Mayor Suarez. Now hopefully we're getting Mayor Fraga, our great new mayor of the city of Doral.
First female mayor in Doral.
Yeah, that's right.
Christy Fraga, we're proud of her.
And make sure you speak to our vice mayor. Is he still here? Because he is amazing too, Rafael Piñedo. And new Marine Force. We have a great government here, so let's make sure we do more with Carnival since you're right here. And don't ever leave, okay?
Okay.
Don't ever leave. I love saying Carnival is a flagship of Doral, and it is. Okay. So thank you for the St. Jude's. I know that every time we do that event, you say make sure that you write that check to Carnival for every attendee, and we do that. Carmen gets all these accolades from St. Jude's, because she's our CFO, and she is our Chief Fun Officer too. So Carmen Lopez, our VP. So I want to thank you for that.
I've never heard that the financial officer is the Chief Fun Officer too. So congrats there.
That's Carmen Lopez, our VP, and our founder. This is our 15th year. of operations, and we're getting stronger. We're getting stronger thanks to the strength of our new government in Doral. We're very excited about that. So mostly I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for supporting the community. Now, I'll just need your check for the trustee membership. Okay, that's all I need. So. But I want to thank you, and I do really want to relay that the culture, and not just the culture internally, and you can see that. Calvin is a representative. It was the other gentleman. It's so amazing. And we go on the ship, and even though they're working overtime, they dance on the tables for us and stuff during that lunch. It's an amazing event. We were really pushing to get that back. We lost it during COVID, of course. But what's your mentality about that, about the community? How is it that, you can find it in yours, and then you try to call someone for service, and you have to go through 15 prompts to get someone, and you guys are still answering the phone like we do? Well, how do you get that instilled in this day where people are still blaming COVID for that?
Well, it's been a long journey out of where we were, and there have been moments where you couldn't get through on our phones either. So, but I think it's about what is our intention, right? And how are we supporting our employees? Because like many companies, we didn't have enough workers in the office. We were able to bring back people on the ship, but then we ran into challenges where, again, our relationships with State Department helped because we couldn't get visas for the crew members we were bringing back as we were restarting ships. And working with the U.S. State Department, they made it possible for our crew members who normally would have to go for their in-person interviews in their home country to come to the Bahamas and do their processing there. So, you have to be creative. I mean, we've all lived through something that will be talked about 100 years from now. And we did things that we never could have imagined, as you said. It was never in the scenario plan that we would be shut down for, that our entire business would be shut down for 16 months. But
it just really is amazing, right?
Right?
I think about when there's the case studies of what we've gone through, as a world in the last 2 years, and the resiliency. I think resiliency around leadership, resiliency of companies, resiliency of people. And it will be, I think, in the history books, beyond the science and everything else, and certainly the lives lost will be, I think, the resiliency of a nation and of a world to bounce back, and I think bounce back with a stronger focus on caring for one another, a stronger focus for experience, a stronger focus for that person-to-person kind of connection, which I think it was easy and might have been getting lost in our digital connectivity, is the human connectivity. I want to make sure if one of our students, we see our presidential scholars are right here. If you've got another question, Alejandro.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gladys Mesrahi from the Power of the Hills Foundation. And my question to you on a women in a top leadership position, what are the changes that you've been able to make to close the gender gap?
I think we didn't have a gender gap in terms of the numbers of people we had. It's really more about bringing a focus to all people, for people who want to do new and different things. I've often said, and I think you said, my career to get here was not a linear path. It was not traditional. One of the things I've encouraged, not just for women, but of everyone, is consider taking jobs that are maybe parallel. Everyone seems to get very fixated on how I move up the ladder. I don't want to do that job unless I'm going to get a title promotion. To me, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't made some decisions along the way that some people thought was kind of backwards. Like, why did I leave Maritz, where I was CEO, to take a job running the Cruise Industry Trade Association? Well, if I hadn't done that, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here. So I think it is important to not think about career path the way we may have done historically, and to think about we're bringing more and more people off of the ships who are coming to work in Doral in office jobs. We've just opened an office in Manila in the Philippines to give our Filipino crew members a career path that ultimately, for those that want to get off the ships and live at home, they can do that again.
That's fantastic. And I think, when we think about just education, I would say we know that across the country, 60% of students are women. But if you think about female presidents, it's at 27%, 28%. So, we see those gaps. And one of the things we've done here at the college is launched a Presidential Leadership Academy. And I spend a year with about 55 of our leaders on a monthly basis reading books, talking about leadership and talking about strategy. Because I think we can't do enough of the mentoring aspect and of the opportunity. And then I would just say that our president's cabinet, to the guys, sorry, is majority women. But to the men in the room, I want to say that it's not, for me, it's about making sure that we create a culture of opportunity for everyone, that everyone has an opportunity, that if you keep learning, if you keep strategizing, if you keep executing, that there's going to be an opportunity for you, because we're short on talent. I don't think we're short on people. We're really short on building capacity and talent, whether it's the travel and tourism industry, whether it's the tech, whether it's television. Anywhere we talk to workforce leaders and CEOs, they want the most talented person. And I think that that's the important part, is that we're in a place where we build talent, and as leaders we build that within our institutions and capacity. Go ahead for the next question.
Hi, my name is Zachary. So you talked about your jump up to president, and you said you started from the bottom. What was your train of thought going from, working in the travel agency to going to president? Like, did you wake up like, wait, I'm president of a company? Like, how did that happen? Like, what was your train of thought throughout the process?
That pretty well describes it. When I worked at the agency in Philadelphia for 20 years and ultimately became president. So for that, it was, a growing opportunity. We were a small business, very entrepreneurial. We got into another business that we grew. But clearly, going from where I had been to Carnival, right? This was a, Fortune 500 public company, and it was definitely very intimidating, especially because when I started, within 6 months, the entire leadership team had resigned by that. I started, and 2 weeks in, the head of operations left, and then the CFO, and then the head of HR. Well, I don't want to blame myself too much, because my predecessor announced he was leaving 6 months before I started. So I think clearly some of them had already been decided that if they weren't getting my job, they weren't staying. And there were many nights, and I moved to Miami, so I'm not from Miami. I remember lying in bed, not sleeping, thinking, oh my gosh, what is Mickey thinking? They're gonna, everybody's leaving. But, you take a breath, and you realize that, okay, this is actually an opportunity for me to build my own team. And there was a lot of talent in the organization that I was able to promote and restructure, and brought some people in from outside. And as you said, even with 4 generations, that's all just more diversity, right? And so here I am 8 years later, but you're right. That is what I thought. Oh, wow. Are they really talking to me?
I have those moments. Yeah. Somebody will introduce me. I'm like, I'm the president of this college. I went to this college because I was a student at this college. Yeah, okay. But just shows anything is possible. That's right. Next.
Hello again. I was just acquainted with you in the Ideal Center. Thank you so much for coming today. I just want to know, I know you're the first female president of Carnival, and I'm pretty sure you faced a lot of discriminatory issues to get to where you are. What advice would you have for students who might face the same, and how would you be able to motivate them to still achieve their goals even after facing such discriminatory?
Well, as you said, especially of my age and generation, it was a different time when I started working, and I was often the only woman, and I traveled a lot. We ran large events for pharmaceutical companies, automotive companies, and being on the road, and people go on the road and they turn into very different people than when I met them in the office. And, you know, I remember Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, and I remember having to deal with those issues personally and making the decision to escalate, even though there were some in my company that thought, well, you know, they're a really big client. Do you really think that's it? But it goes back to this, having the courage. If these are our values, and if this is what we know to be right, then we know it makes it, yes, it's hard because there's always fear that someone wasn't going to believe me, or someone was, you know, we were going to lose this big account. At the end of the day, we didn't lose the big account, and that person lost their job, and but others knew that I had stood up. And so, you know, my advice is you have to follow your own true north. And that has, no matter how hard that's been sometimes, it really has allowed me to sleep at night, to know at least I did the right thing, what I believe was the right thing. Maybe it's not popular, but maybe if you're in an organization or a climate that is going to allow that, then that's what you need to make a change.
Good morning. My name's Halima. Earlier you mentioned that you had a dream of becoming a flight attendant and that dream was cut short. So what inspired you to aim for higher? Like, what told you you could do this? That's not the end of the world.
Well, I didn't know I could do this. And so literally, when I didn't get the flight attendant job, I just knew I wanted to be in the travel industry. And starting out as the receptionist, I really didn't set my sight to be where I have gotten.
You just
today.
thought you'd get a couple of free discounted, some travel vouchers.
Right, but as I got into it, I was good at managing people. I was very entrepreneurial. I was able to really rise, and I love being in business and being with people and communicating. I was very much on the sales and marketing and commercial side. And so I go back to, sometimes I talk to our younger employees who have this goal, and if they don't achieve this specific job or title by this date, then somehow they feel they failed, or that they're running out of time and they're not even 30. And so I really think you have to own where you are now, without worrying about, yes, you want to think about, maybe this leads me to the place I want to go. And it's good to have a goal, and it's good to have a vision, but don't let that stand in the way of paying attention to where you are in this moment and letting opportunities come to you. I mean, when those opportunities come, then you have a choice. Do I jump in? Even when it's unknown, or when it's taking that parallel path. When I left Maritz to go run this cruise industry association, only you can decide. But really own the job that you have today. And I think we put a lot of pressure on our kids.
I do too. I think that's great advice about owning where you are and then growing where you are. Sometimes you might not grow in a title, but the opportunity gives you time to grow as a person or to grow as a leader, and be prepared when that opportunity comes. We'll land in for the last question now, so we've got one more and then we'll wrap it up.
All right. Hi, my name is Ashley Varela. You had mentioned culture, right? And I personally think, and I feel like a lot of people know that diversity can be very difficult, but you say that you're very good at managing people. So how do you manage people of many different walks? How do you help them work together? Are you meticulous with how you choose people that come into your team? I had the question of, do you allow them to, or do you pick people that fit a certain standard, or do you pick people that are different, difficult to work with, yet you see the potential in them? How do you think about that?
Well, I think that first is I do have people that are very different from me, right? Because I think that is what diversity and different backgrounds, different experiences, different skills I did not go to college. And our chief commercial officer went to MIT. Our chief financial officer his father was a professor at, I think, in one of the
Stanford.
one of the, another guy did go to Stanford, was a BCG consultant. So, but we made a great team because guess what? I always brought up things that they hadn't thought about. And I always made them do things they didn't want to do. I mean, those guys were really uncomfortable having to, well, why do we have to tell people that?
Can't we just send them the PowerPoint?
Literally. I mean, Isabella is here. Isabella works with me and my team, and we are very different. But I think that's what really makes us successful. We come at things differently. I could never do what they do, but they can't do what I do either. So it makes for a good team. And I think that's really the key to diversity is how do you take people and make a team? Because it's never about one person. It's never about the single leader. It's about the people they surround themselves with. And then how does that cascade into the organization so everyone in the organization can see themselves in someone?
Yeah, and I would just add diversity of thought. Yeah. I think that when we think about diversity, not just the diversity of the people around us, but the diversity of how people think around us and leaving a space where that empathy and understanding can happen, because then that really does bridge those gaps that might separate us, is when you can sit quiet enough and see the lens in which someone is thinking something that is completely different than the way you do or the way that you see it, and not make it right or wrong and not polarize it, but just build on it, on how it can unite us. So I want to leave you with the last word, and I want, thank you, that was amazing and so thoughtful of your questions. I want just to share your vision for Carnival and what we should expect from your leadership and your team, and what you're most excited about.
Well, as I was sharing with the group earlier, we are taking an 11% capacity increase at Carnival. So we actually have 3 ships with Carnival Celebration that was delivered here in Miami. In December, we have Carnival Venezia that's coming. She'll be in New York year-round. And then our 3rd Excel ship, Jubilee, which will be in Galveston, Texas. For Celebration, we actually, these are LNG ships. So we have Mardi Gras at Port Canaveral. So these are the first liquefied natural gas propulsion ships in the Americas. And so we are really reducing our carbon footprint. We are investing in shore power. So here in Miami, we will have shore power where the ships will actually plug into the electrical grid, as opposed to when we're running alongside using fuel. We've also removed a significant amount of single-use plastics from the ship, and Mayor Cava has a certification that I think we've well exceeded. What's enough, 2 million, or what did we remove, Kelly, from?
We removed 90%.
90% of single-use plastics have been removed from Carnival cruise ships, and our plastic water bottles are actually tracked and all recycled. We are reducing food waste. We've installed, even during the pandemic, we've installed over 600 food digesters. And so these are machines on the ships that take, and all of any food that's left is put into this machine, and there's an organism inside the machine, and it eats all of the food waste, and you're left with a bottle about this big of effluent that is then disposed of properly. And so we're very, very committed and focused on the environment. Every Carnival cruise ship has an environmental officer. We also have a public health officer on every ship. So I'm really proud of the work and commitment that we have at Carnival, across Carnival Corporation and our other brands, to really be more sustainable and to lean into the technologies that exist. Fuel cell, hydrogen, there's a lot of research and development. There's a lot of enablement with technology that reduces paper. We've reduced a significant amount of paper that used to be issued on the ships. We've worked with Customs Board CBP, facial recognition to help with embarkation. There's a lot of technology now that enables every business, including ours, so there's a big investments. And in 2024, we'll take on another close to 14% capacity. So Carnival Cruise Line is growing. We are thrilled to have every ship back in our fleet. We were the first cruise line to have every ship back in the fleet, and I'm really proud of the team. We are sailing at over 100% occupancies.
Wow. Congratulations to you and to the entire Carnival team. We wish you the very best, and we want to thank you for spending your time with us and with our students and our team here, and count on us to be a great partner and to be a great neighbor, and continue to do collaborations together. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, and congratulations to you too for being the first. And I think we have our Carnival recruiters here, so if anyone wants to learn more about Carnival and the opportunities that we have, right? Please stop by. But thank you so much for having me. It was a real thrill, and so amazing to hear the stories and meet your students in this Idea Center. Just incredible. Really
thank you so much. And to Alejandro, thank you. Beverly, thank you. And everyone, thanks.